Okay, switching to plan B. Hey!
This is Batroc the Leaper. The last time we saw him was in Captain America The Winter Soldier, and he fought Captain America. Now, this is an interesting development for the series, but he is played by a dude named George St. Pierre, and George St. Pierre is a two-time UFC champion in both welterweight and middleweight divisions, and he is crazy good. He's like widely regarded as one of the most talented fighters the UFC's ever had, so I was super psyched to see him back in this show. Now this was a really interesting shot. So this was either a Texas switch or they snuck in a cut right there because that person coming in the doorway was a stunt double, but this is Anthony Mackie. And you can tell that Anthony Mackie has been working on his kicks because those look pretty good. The flexibility could be a little bit better, but they look really strong. Now, a really interesting thing to think about is he used his wings as a shield there for the bullets, but at the end of Endgame, Captain America gave him the Captain American shield. So it immediately makes you as an audience member think, why isn't he using the shield to block the bullets? Where is the shield? Why is he using his wings? And Batroc comes back in with a flying kick, and that looks so good. And we get this really cool, like, shaky cam fight sequence between Falcon and Batroc. Now you can't exactly see what's going on too well because, again, it's shaky cam mixed with really quick cuts, but it's really entertaining to watch.
Sam?
And now we get this really interesting evolution of the fight scene where they move locations and they go out of the plane and they get into these wingsuits, which I think is the first time we've seen this kind of thing in the MCU universe, which is really, really cool. I really like when shows try new things. And this makes a lot of narrative sense because Falcon, as a superhero, is most comfortable in the air. So it's really interesting to do a fight scene in the air. Now, these kind of shots are mixed in with a lot of like CG, but like this shot right here, they probably just threw a GoPro onto someone who was actually a wingsuit like flyer and got that footage, which is really, really cool. And we get some environmental obstacles because Sam's wingsuit is like, has a broader width than the other wingsuit divers. And then we come in with these helicopters and it's just like stacking these obstacles against Sam, which is narratively interesting because Falcon is not a stereotypical superhero. He's just a person with a super suit. So it's harder for him to deal with these kinds of obstacles. Now I love that we get to see some Red Wing stuff here too, because Red Wing in the comics is a pet falcon that the superhero Falcon has. In the MCU universe, they changed it to make it like a drone kind of thing. But I think it's a really interesting choice, and I love seeing the relationship between like Falcon and Red Wing. It's really cool. Now, I want to point out another thing as well. Falcon as a superhero is much more lethal than Captain America, which I think is interesting because, again, he's not a superhero. He doesn't have superpowers. So Captain America and other superheroes, there's a difference in power, and that gives them a luxury where they can exert mercy if they want. Whereas I think Falcon, because he's just a person, doesn't have that same luxury, which is really, really interesting. That was a really good elbow from Anthony Mackie. And again here, he just like straight up blows up that helicopter. All of those people are dead. Like there's no saving them.
Heads up, you're about to fly into Libyan airspace. And I assume they have
And this was a really interesting like geopolitical aspect to bring in. So Libya as a country has been in some type of civil war for like the past 10 years. There's a ton of civil unrest, and so if America were to cross into Libyan airspace without permission, it could potentially cause an international incident, and we would face ramifications from the UN. And so that is kind of a big deal, and it's interesting that they brought that up in the MCU. I liked seeing it. I liked having it grounded into a more realistic perspective.
He's outnumbered.
And we get some like more Michael Bay-ish kind of explosions here, which are always fun to see. And that was like a really intense moment. And I really like how they're mixing in these shots of Falcon's face, because it gives you more of like an emotional context of what he's feeling while he's like flying through the air and these explosions are happening. It's also very reminiscent of like Iron Man type of stuff. So yeah, like seeing it.
I just did.
And that was like a really cool thing to just see. And then Batroc flies out of the helicopter. So you don't really get to find out like why he was there. You don't get to find out who he was working for. He wasn't ever part of Hydra. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back in the show. I'm hoping he does, because again, George St. Pierre is an amazing fighter and I love seeing the stuff that he has to bring to the table. Skipping forward, now we get to see the Winter Soldier in action. And one of the things that makes me really excited about this show is the idea that we get to see more of him as a character. I've been a fan of Sebastian Stan since way back when he did The Covenant. And so I'm, yeah, very excited to see more of his stuff. Now, because he's coming in and he's wearing the mask and he's being very lethal to all of these people, it really makes you wonder if it's like happening in real time or if this is some type of flashback or something.
Hail Hydra.
And especially with that line, like it's very clear that he is acting on behalf of Hydra, which no longer exists. So it leans towards this idea that this is either a memory or a dream sequence or something. But really all of that fighting only lasted like less than a minute, so it was really just a taste of what I'm hoping more to come. They opened the show with like almost an 8-minute sequence of Falcon and like all this awesome stuff from him. So I'm really hoping in future episodes that they'll do the same kind of thing for Bucky. Moving forward to the last part of the episode, this dude's name is Officer Torres, but his real name is Danny Ramirez, and he's relatively a new actor. I haven't seen him in anything in the past, but I think he does a good job, and I want to see more of him in the future. But he has come to Switzerland, and he's tracking the Flag Smashers, which is like a new terrorist organization that I'm assuming are going to be the main antagonists of this show. He described himself earlier as the eyes on the ground for Falcon, which I think is really just gonna put him in a very strong sidekick role for the show. So that'll be interesting to see. So this is a pretty cool shot right here, but they cheated the stunt. So they make you believe that this dude jumped out of like a 4-story window, but you don't actually see him jumping. So they definitely cheated that somehow. However, it brings to mind the fact that this dude has to have superpowers of some kind, because a normal person could not jump out of a 4th-story window and land without rolling or anything and come away unscathed. So this is an interesting development. Now this is a cool stunt. So he throws the dude, but then after he like rolls over him, that roll was completely unnecessary. It was just there for flash, but it was cool to see. And then he kicks this dude. That dude was definitely on a wire getting pulled back, and it confirms again that this guy definitely is super powered. We're dealing with a new nemesis here. And so he grabs Torres' wrist, he gets him in a wrist lock. That wrist lock wouldn't actually work because you have to grab the meat of the thumb, and he didn't. He was just grabbing the wrist. But then he throws Torres, and Torres' stunt double gets a really cool flip. The stunt double added a cool tuck in the middle of the flip, which is cool to see. It's like a cool little flair that you can add to put your own little twist onto a stunt that happens a lot. So that's cool, and I appreciate seeing it.
There's an 8th person. I think they have a hostage.
They open with this really wide, beautiful establishing shot, and then Bucky jumps from the road onto this moving truck. So the way that they would have done that stunt is they would have had the truck driving slower so that a stunt person could actually run and keep up with it, and then that person would have jumped onto the truck, and then they would have juxtaposed that shot with the shot before, which shows the truck's moving faster. And when you juxtapose those two shots together, it makes it look like the stunt person is just jumping full speed onto that truck. This girl's name is Erin Kellyman, and she's a relatively new actress. I think she only started acting like 2015, 2016, something like that. And she's relatively young. I think she's in her mid-20s maybe. And I know she was in the Solo movie for Star Wars, which I have not seen yet. But I really like when Disney takes chances on younger actors, and I think it's really cool. Now this stunt was done mostly by a stunt double, but they did get Sebastian Stan for that hanging on the truck moment. And that stunt was probably done completely in a studio, and then they superimposed the background to make it look like it was on location. And that actually happens a lot in this fight. So this shot with the people on the truck in this wide, that was probably on location. That shot was in studio. This was definitely in the studio.
I always wanted to do
And
that.
I love these quips that they add in the middle of fight scenes. They're so fun, they're a breath of fresh air, and it's a really great way to add levity to a fight. There's a good hit kick followed up by a hook punch by Falcon, and then Bucky tries to do like an ankle sweep, doesn't really work, and then that was a cool stunt. Yeah, these shots, these establishing shots where it's showing like the truck wheels and more of the locations, like they're so interesting. And then US Soldier comes into the fight, and I totally was not expecting this at all. So this guy's name is Wyatt Russell, and he's playing US Agent. I refuse to call him Captain America because he's not Captain America, he's US Agent. Now, Wyatt Russell is actually the son of Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, which is like super interesting, but he comes from a background of hockey, which is a very physical sport. And you can tell that he's not a trained fighter, but he's very comfortable in his body. And I think when actors come to fight scenes and fight choreo and they're already comfortable in their body, it can make a world of difference, and I think that this is a great example of that. So this choreo isn't too hard, we're not seeing anything too difficult, it's mostly 1 or 2 moves, but what we are seeing is a highlight of all of their powers. So we can see Bucky's arm and him below the truck, which by the way, I loved this stunt, and all of this would have been done in a studio, and it was just like so cool to see that. And then here with Falcon using his wings in this environmental obstacle on the highway, and US Agent using the shield, like this is all very indulgent, fun superhero stuff that we all want to see when we watch Marvel. So I like seeing it. And these kind of like POV shots of Falcon flying, and then in front of the truck.
Hello, girl, kick your ass.
And then these like fun quips. This is Marvel at its finest. And I had so much fun watching this episode. Now this showed a huge difference for me between US Agent and Captain America. Captain America would never use a gun, whereas US Agent pulled out a pistol to try to deal with those bad guys. This was a really cool stunt to see. And you can see right here that when they're rolling in the field, if you slow-mo and check it out, you can totally see that both of those people are stunt people. It is definitely not Sebastian Stan or Anthony Mackie.
Those were all for soldiers, Sam.
I know. You're welcome, by the way.
And now Battlestar's in trouble. That was a strong front kick, and that was a cool gimmick to see US Agent save Battlestar with the shield. I like seeing that. And this shot makes you beg the question, are the Flag Smashers the true bad guys? Because in a stereotypical sense, the big bad baddie doesn't care about what happens to his henchmen. Carly went back and made sure that he was okay. So it makes you question whether there's a bigger bad guy in the works. That was a really good wrist lock, and then she punched him off of the top of the truck. Good stunt from that dude, hitting the car and then rolling off. And that's the end of the fight.
The weakest point in any system isn't the software or the hardware, it's the meatware, the human element. Now, in this lockup, it's 9-1, prisoners to guards. And if
This is a fun little like heist breakout kind of bit that they do. It's very Italian job, very kind of what the Fast and Furious franchise has turned into. So I like that they kind of snuck this in
many
there.
reasons.
That was a good head slam, and then that was a really strong hook, and then he kind of crawls over the table. I like how you can see the guy's lower back tat, like, randomly, and I wanted to see more of this, like, big jail fight. Sadly, we don't get to see any more than that. But Daniel Bull does get this cool gun technique right here, so his technique is technically correct, but he moved kind of slow. In order for that move to actually work on someone who's holding a revolver against you, you have to move very quickly, because if you even give them a fraction of a second, that could be the difference between life and death for you. And yeah, I was hoping we'd see more fist fighting in this like heist jailbreak sequence. Sadly, that's all we get to see, but there is more in this episode, so let's jump forward to that.
Do you know him?
Only by reputation. In Madripoor, he's judge, jury, and executioner.
After busting out of jail, Zemo has taken Bucky and Sam to Madripoor, which is a fictional Marvel city, and they're looking for the super soldier serum, and they are trying to find a dude named the Power Broker in order to track it down. So we're in this bar, and Bucky has to pretend to be the Winter Soldier again. He starts with a really strong armbar, and the stunt person sold that really, really well. Now, I liked this clip, but it's all, like, the shots are all happening so quickly that you can't really see the choreo that well, which is really a shame because that uppercut looks so good. I would have loved to see it more clearly instead of just in the, like, you know, a third of a second that shot was. But as quickly as it starts, it ends. And so it makes sense that they don't want to have Bucky indulge too much in the Winter Soldier persona, because it's a regression for him. And you can see that Sam is worried about his well-being, even though he's just pretending, so I get why they wanted to keep that short.
You good? You seem like a pretty smart guy, so you better become conversational real quick.
How about a counter proposal?
Moving forward, Zemo, Sam, and Bucky have tracked the Power Broker's, like, scientist that is making the Super Soldier Serum. And Sharon Carter shows up, and I love her character, and I was so stoked to see that she was back in this show. She gets this really great pipe choreo, and this is all her stunt double, but this is all really dynamic, and I love these aerial shots. It looks really great. That was a really strong pick, and the pacing in this fight is really strong because they're juxtaposing these fight sequences with Sharon and all these bounty hunters with Falcon and Bucky and the scientist, and it works really well. So this is a really fun sequence right here. She gets this really great knife technique, controls the knife, takes him down, which is really great, and then they get a Texas switch right here where they switch her with her stunt double. This is Emily Van Camp's stunt double, and she gets thrown up against the wall. You can see she does a really great job of hiding her face right there, and then they get a sneak cut right there with the guy's leg and get her back in there, which is great. This is a textbook armbar right here that looks really great.
I was brought in. Not my pig, not my farm.
That was a great left cross. And this is the beginning of the one shot, which I want to point out. But this shot specifically surprised me because Sharon Carter's being way more lethal than I remember her being. I mean, she's been on the run and a fugitive for the past like 5 years, so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, and then I like this one shot. It didn't have a ton of hand-to-hand combat, but there was still a lot of movement, which is still hard choreo to do, so good on her.
I'm not your enemy. I agree with your fight. I just can't get with the way you're fighting it. And I'm sure
Watch really closely here because they do something really tricky. Specifically, watch John Walker's positioning, watch Sam Wilson's positioning, and watch the positioning of the shield, and you'll see that there are discrepancies. So she punches him, and they were in line, but then they are staggered. The shield was here, but then it was behind. So that probably means that there was more to that fight scene that was cut for time. Now, both of those jumps were done by stunt doubles on wires. Now, this one was also done by Carly's stunt double. So that one actually looks like it was done by Sebastian Stan. He gets a good side vault, and then the second shot and the landing shot were both probably done by a stunt double.
Nakuba ikona into ekufune kifezin killing guy. Shali pelile. Release him to us now.
Hi, John Walker. Captain America. Well, let's put down the pointy sticks.
I was so stoked to see Io and the Dora Milaje back. I'm really glad they're paying this off because they started setting it up in the last episode.
The Dora Milaje don't have jurisdiction here.
The Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever the Dora Milaje find themselves to be.
And you can just see how much disdain and disgust is dripping from her voice. I just love it. She starts off with this really strong spear choreo, and that's one of the reasons I really like the Dora Milaje, is because they bring in this weapon that, one, we don't normally see in movies anymore, and two, it's very unique in the Marvel Universe, and so I love seeing it. Like these spinning movements with the neck, and these like very strong stances, they all look
We should
great.
do something.
Looking strong, John.
And this is probably my favorite fight of the show thus far because it had such good narrative work built into it. There's so much going on in this fight. Bucky and Sam are trying to mediate without actually getting too involved, and John Walker and Battlestar are trying to win, whereas Io and the Dora Milaje are trying to capture Zemo. And you can see here, Zemo's like taking advantage of the environmental conflict and just slipping out, and that's very strong narrative work. And I loved this silhouette shot. It was so compelling and so great. See, this is another example of good narrative work. They're introducing another environmental obstacle where John Walker cannot use the shield. And then here again, another obstacle where Bucky's arm is suddenly rendered useless. And you can see immediately the impact that it has. Not only is he shocked, but there's also like a sense of betrayal on his face. And there's so much subtext there. There's so much subtext in their relationship and his history, and it's just like so strong narratively. I really like it when fight scenes can mix in this narrative stuff in order to move the story forward and move the characters forward. It's very, very good.
He is gone. Leave it.
Did you know they could do that?
And this is another example of what I'm talking about. U.S. Agent did not take the shield back from the Dora Milaje. The Dora Milaje gave him the shield back. And for whatever reason, because he didn't take it back, because he lost the fight and they gave it back to him, it was super emasculating for him. You can see how devastated he is, how shaken he is, and how he is deriving his value from how effective he is on the battlefield. And because he was not effective in this fight, it is a direct blow to how he values himself as a person and as a hero. And that is a really dangerous position to be in, especially when you are a person with power and authority.
Hello, John Walker.
Hey, Sam. New cap is moving. Looks like he's found them. Or maybe they found him.
It's Walker.
A lot of the stunt right here was CG cut together with practical, and then that was a jump spinning sidekick from Falcon. That looked great. Now, one thing that bugs me in movies and TV is when characters that are supposed to know how to use guns do not use guns correctly. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trained in like tactical gunfighting, but I believe that you're supposed to have your arms straight out in order to minimize any recoil. So they were not doing that. Also, they obviously cleared this room totally wrong. So it is what it is. And you can see again here, like, there was no clearing of the room. He just barged straight in. So, not the most realistic way to try to be hunting down criminals in, like, an empty building. I like to think this body drag. Body drags are really easy stunts to do, and they look good. So, that was great. Now, that punch did not look awesome. It could have been framed better, but also narratively, like if a super soldier were to punch you full force in the face and you were just an average Joe, you'd be dead. There is no way that Battlestar would just get knocked out from that, so that's narratively hard to believe. And this was some fun choreo. We get to, again, play with the silhouette and shadows here, which I think looks really great aesthetically. And then, again, we fall into this, like, weird narrative thing where the assailant just, like, disappears. It's very ninja-esque, and this is not a mechanic that we have been introduced to earlier, so it seems a little bit unbelievable again. Most of that stuff was CG. A lot of that was CG as well. And so now we get to see the fact that US Agent has used the serum. And it really is just a testament to how much of an ego-driven fighter he is, which is a clear differentiation for me between someone who is a hero and someone who is not. A hero is someone who is driven by things that benefit people other than themselves. They want to protect other people. They want to save other people. And so when they lose fights or when they are losing, they are driven to become better in order to better help other people. John Walker is ego-driven, and because he lost the last fight, it did a serious blow to his morale and therefore motivated him to take the serum, which will now just give him more power so that he can win the fight. It has nothing to do with him saving anyone. And this coil's like a little sloppy. That was a good spinning sidekick, and I think that was Sebastian Stan, which is cool. Get another vault right there. And that was a strong front kick. Breaking through walls is always a fun stunt to see, so like that.
Stay there.
This is all like really fun Marvel stuff. They're showing off their powers. Falcon's showing off his wing. US Agent's showing off the shield.
What's with all the knives?
Very on brand. And as soon as Bucky caught that knife, I was super stoked. I want to see more Bucky knife fighting. That was a really great stunt. And this is all good choreo. That was a really fun throw. So I wanted that sequence to be longer. That was a great jump spinning back kick. And yeah, this is all great stuff. That was a really great cross. Good side vault from Carly. And then they get a really strong front punch, which kind of takes out Battlestar. Again, narratively, I thought this was a little strange because we've been fighting for 4 episodes now, and it doesn't really mesh in my mind that the entire fight would stop as soon as one person dies, because they've been exerting lethal force for like 4 episodes. Combined with the fact that Carly already blew up a building, like, I get that they were targeting US Agent, not Battlestar, but I think it was a little narratively weak that it paused the entire fight and caused them all to like reevaluate what they were doing.
John. You gotta give me the shield, man.
So that's what this is. He almost got me.
You made a mistake.
You don't want to do this.
Yeah, we do.
Bucky starts off strong with a spinning hook kick, but John Walker just dodges. Now, you never want to open a fight with a spinning hook or any other really flashy kick like that for that exact reason. They're really telegraphed and they take more time to execute, so your opponent will always just dodge them. What I really liked about this fight was that it got the pacing exactly right. A lot of times in movies, when you see a fight scene that is one person versus multiple people, it's unrealistic because you'll see multiple people attacking at the same time, but that doesn't actually really work. When one person is fighting multiple people, the disadvantage comes from being able to swap out. That's exactly what's happening here. Bucky is fighting, and then Falcon swaps in, and then Bucky swaps back in, and it's really technically good. That was a spinning back fist, and then that was a spinning hook. And these are more advanced strikes than what we've been seeing in the show thus far, and so I like seeing it. A lot of them are from their doubles, which you can tell because they're not using one fluid shot. They're using a couple different shots to show one strike, and that's always a dead giveaway. But they do it really well here, so I don't mind. Now that was super interesting. Falcon just swept US Agent with his wings. That's something I've never seen before, so that was cool.
We could have been a team.
And we get some of this cable work here. I really enjoy when fight scenes use props, and honestly, having that kind of like reach would be super advantageous in a fight. So I don't know why he hasn't been using more of that stuff in the show. Right here, US Agent has Falcon in a mount. Now, his technique here is actually really terrible, but you see this in movies all the time. He's keeping his body perpendicular to the ground. When you're in a mount on someone, the more perpendicular you are to the ground, the easier it is to get thrown off. What Falcon should have done is planted his feet, bucked his hips, and then twisted. That's the easiest way to get out of mount. These are all really strong crosses, and I really like this shot. I like it when fight scenes pull out and give you really wide shots. You don't see that a ton, but it provides variety, which I really enjoy. And that arm break was gnarly. In reality, if you had someone's arm up against the corner of a wall like that and you were using the corner of the wall as a lever, you would not need to apply that much force in order to break the arm at all. So that was very realistic. Bucky gets him in a fireman carry right there, and then Sam does a jump flying double kick. And that was a crazy end to this fight. Sam Wilson flies in with a super dynamic entrance, crashing through the window, going into a dive roll, and showing off the new Captain America suit. And I was so here for it. I think the suit looks awesome. I really love the redesign, and I think that the way that the suit looks with the shield is on point.
Wait, who are you? Captain America.
And this was such a pivotal point in Sam's character development when he is finally willing to take up the mantle and say the name Captain America. It was a huge victory for him. That was a front stepping tool kick. Sam does a really great back roll out of it. And then this is Batroc the Leaper, which I think was a really great decision. The show opened with Falcon fighting Batroc, and now we get to see the new and improved Falcon, Captain America, fighting Batroc. And I think it was a really good narrative way to the bookend of the show. I thought it was a really great choice, and George St. Pierre is awesome.
Don't let him out of the building.
Oops.
This is some really tricky stuff here. That was a front kick into a jumping roundhouse, and then that was a jump spinning side kick. This all just shows how talented George St. Pierre is as a martial artist.
Well, that's one down.
How'd you manage
So another really strong side kick from George St. Pierre, and the way that they framed this fight was an interesting choice. Throughout this whole episode, they are juxtaposing clips of fight scenes with these other scenes that are moving the plot forward and moving the finale forward. And it makes sense from a logistical point of view, but I think because they were using it so much and leaning on that mechanic so much, it actually ended up being a disservice. I feel like the overall flow of this episode was kind of choppy because of it. There was a nice tornado kick by Captain America, followed up by a kick immediately after that, and that's actually one of my favorite tricks to throw in sparring. To throw a really quick kick right after a flashy one, most people don't expect it. Batroc showing off more tricky choreo here. You get to see his flexibility with this kick, and honestly, like, I was just really pleased with how this looked. Again, George St. Pierre is an amazing fighter, and anytime he does anything, it's really well done.
Au revoir.
And I really liked how they chose to end this fight as well. Captain America throwing the shield out and then jumping out the window, spreading his wings and catching it on the way down is just style points like crazy, and that's exactly the kind of spectacle that we want to see in this episode. This stunt right here where Bucky is driving the motorcycle towards the Flag Smashers is so reminiscent of a stunt that Steve Rogers' Captain America did in Captain America The Winter Soldier. When Bucky flies off the motorcycle and tackles the Flag Smasher, it is almost exactly the same as when Steve Rogers flew off of the motorcycle and jumped onto the Hydra ship. Marvel loves its callbacks, and I don't think they did that as a mistake. I think they did it on purpose, and it is meant to show Bucky's character progression. He is now also evolving as a character. He is taking up his portion of Steve's legacy by embracing his identity as the White Wolf and being a proper support, both physically and morally, for the new Captain America. And now we get John Walker coming back. And I was expecting him to come back in this episode. This was not a surprise by any means. But it seemed kind of random that he just like walked up in the middle of the fight.
You don't think Lamar's like
But
that?
we've all been waiting for the John Walker-Carly rematch. So I was excited to see it. Carly gets a really strong roundhouse kick and just kicks the shield down. And I thought that it was a really great subversion of what we were expecting. John's shield immediately gets dented in this fight, and I think that that is very strong symbolically. There are a lot of conclusions that you can draw from that simple imagery. And right here, he is in trouble. When you have a group of assailants that are right on top of you and you are on the ground, there isn't really a ton that you can do. He is using the shield to cover up, which is so important. And then luckily Bucky comes in to save the day. And I was not expecting this. I was not expecting Bucky to team up and help John Walker, especially based on the interactions that they had in the past. So I was pleasantly surprised. That was another strong spinning sidekick, and I love seeing these spinning kicks, these jumping kicks. They're harder to pull off, so I enjoy seeing them. John dispatches the last of like the miscellaneous Flag Smashers right here, and it very quickly turns into a one-on-one fight between him and Carly. And I thought that this was another very pivotal part of the episode. We have been wanting to see the showdown between John Walker and between Carly Morgenthau. I really liked how they changed locations here as well. The lighting is different, the color scheme is different, and the framing is different, and it really adds aesthetic value to your fight. Carly was losing the fight before. She couldn't stand up to John Walker 1v1 in a test of pure strength, which makes sense. So she moved locations, went into this confined space where she could use her size and agility to an advantage against John in order to overpower him. I thought it was a really great way to show some of her character in the fight.
Sam, stay back.
So what's next, huh? You killed 10 this time, then what, 100? Where does it end? Please, let me help you.
Don't try and manipulate me. Carly, don't!
Carly immediately tries to use her brute strength in order to overpower Captain America, and this is the first and only time in the show that we have seen a non-serum powered person fight a serum powered person with no partners and no backup. Now, I think the most thematically compelling thing about this fight is the fact that Captain America is trying to win her over by not fighting her. I think that is such an interesting choice. However, I think that sometimes thematically it's stronger to show and not tell. This episode specifically was very heavy-handed in a lot of the dialogue, and I think it ended up weakening the overall narrative theme. This is another example of what I'm talking about. Carly's saying fight back, Captain America's saying stop it, she responds by saying fight back, and the dialogue is redundant and repetitive and clunky. And the show is already doing a good job of communicating that idea both aesthetically and with the character's motivation. So the heavy-handed dialogue ends up weakening it.